we go. Let's go to Greg. He goes, "Hey, Lee, what do you remember about Chargers kicker John Carney? It seemed to me he was kicking clutch last-second field goals in our run-up to the Super Bowl. Great show."
John's a great gentleman. John retired. I mean, this is a prime example of what being a kicker is like in the NFL, John. Carney got cut by 7 teams. He was all over the place. And they brought him in because the Chargers needed a kicker, and he kicked his way out of the team. He was here for an extended period of time and was a really good field goal kicker. John retired, I think, about age 38, finished up his career. I think it was in New Orleans, did very well, lives out here on the coast. He runs kicking camps for high school kickers and college kickers. And that's what he's dedicated the rest of his life to. Great influence, knows everybody everywhere, helps get kickers placed. It's just, he's just, the only word I can use to describe him is classy gentleman.
Yeah, I met him once, and I thought he was first class as well.
Yeah.
But isn't it cool when someone has a specialty and they just keep double downing on it? So he had the great career. Now he's running these camps.
And he's giving it back to the kids and their families to a degree. It's not free.
Yeah.
But what he does has great influence on these kids.
Well, your old colleague, Scott Kaplan's son, was a kicker, and I think he went to those camps.
Yeah, and his son, I think, might have played for 2 or 3 different universities as a kicker, and just actually just graduated from university last year. But
Justin Kaplan, I think. Yeah.
John Carney, great gentleman. Next question.
All right, let's go to Callan. He goes, "The NL wildcard race is quite a train wreck, or a NASCAR wreck right now. So many teams bunched together coming down the stretch run."
Well, I wouldn't call it a train wreck. I'd say it's pretty fierce competition, because you got the Dodgers, who are about to get the rest of the cavalry, maybe by the end of the week, back. I mean, to me, it looks like Mookie Betts is going to be the first one back. Freddie Freeman is back from the personal crisis at home. He is back, and he is playing for the Dodgers versus the Phillies. And it looks like Yamamoto might be one rehab start away. Kershaw is there. But, you got the Padres, who have done what they've done in terms of all the trades at the deadline to go get these 3 relievers, and that's hugely important. And right behind them, nobody's paying any attention to Arizona. And Arizona picked up multiple relief pitchers at the trade deadline, and they're going to get Eduardo Rodriguez, the big money free agent, who's hardly pitched at all this year because of forearm problems. They're going to get him back, and they've got, obviously, the Texas Ranger pitcher who's been on and off the DL all year, Montgomery. He's back. So all of a sudden, Arizona looks to be a person in the hunt. I don't know where the Giants are right now. I don't like their batting order, but there's no doubt that with Blake Snell dialed in with a 0.55 ERA in the last 5 starts, and they just got Robbie Ray back, who did really well in his first 2 starts off the DL, and you still got the Warrior and Logan Webb, but can the Giants score runs? That's just in the Pacific Division, chasing the wild card race, and then, we haven't even addressed what the hell's happening in the Central or what might happen in the East. I think the one that could be in real trouble is Atlanta. They have so many injuries to their everyday batting order and their pitching problems. Atlanta might fall out of this thing right now. But again, everybody's got about 50 games to play.
Well, while you were talking, I pulled up the list here on MLB.com. Atlanta and the Padres are at the top. They're tied, although there's a difference in games played. Arizona is half game behind them. Those are the 3 right now. I know Arizona, obviously, they were in the World Series. They're expecting to be there again. But look at the Mets are 1.5 out. The Cardinals are 3 out. The Pirates are 3.5 out. The Giants 4.5. Cubs 6, and Reds 6.5 if you want to go that deep. But that's a lot of teams.
A lot of games to be played, and some of them will be playing each other and knock each other out of this thing. And some of them I just don't think have enough. Pittsburgh, where the Padres go in Tuesday and open this road trip. Pirates are playing pretty decent ball, but that's almost an all rookie starting rotation. So you got injuries, you've got innings build up. These guys are going to hit a wall here pretty damn quick because they've thrown so many innings. Even though Paul Skeens, the number 1 draft pick, has just been phenomenal, there's going to be a limitation. And they got a lot of young everyday players who've hardly ever been in a pennant race. And there's a pennant crush. There's a pressure point there where these guys wake up and, oh my God, we got to win this game because it has playoff implications. Never been in that neighborhood before. So some of these teams are going to fall off the radar, I think.
Well, yeah, I'm sure a lot of them will be, oh my God, and then they fade away. But every once in a while, one of those young teams catches
Sure.
fire. And so, hopefully it's not the Pirates when the Padres are facing them. But speaking of Padres Pirates, how about that Martin Perez start, on Sunday for the
Surprised
Padres?
me.
So it's like 6 innings, 1 run. It's like, wow, this guy was actually really good.
At least on that one given start, because he
Yeah.
wasn't good prior to that. He
Mhm.
was in Pittsburgh, and the ERA, I think, was 5.62. He was a hot prospect. Again, that was a guy that Preller had a relationship dating back to when AJ worked for the Texas Rangers. I mean, that's where he came from. But he's kind of moved around. There were some arm problems, etc. But as an insurance policy starter, if he can give them 5 to 6 innings and decent starts, and it's, he's not trailing 5-1 when they yank him out, hey, everybody needs a fifth starter, so hopefully his quality starts there. That first start was pretty good, but he hasn't pitched like that all year.
Yeah, well, I'll take that. All right, let's go here to Richard. Richard says, hey, the Padres get very emotional when they play the Dodgers. Beating LA is the very blood that runs through their veins. However, it disappears when playing other teams. LA still wins the division.
I think so. And again, the cavalry is right at the doorstep. I mean, there's a whole bunch of people who are going to come back. People that are with us on this live stream and people that read my website and read my columns, they just bash the hell out of me. Like, why do you hate the Padres? Or why do you hate the Dodgers? Or why are you rooting for the Dodgers? Or you shouldn't be rooting for the Padres, blah, 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 blah. That's okay. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion, even yours that might be wrong. But think about this. Let's give credit here, because there are a lot of Dave Roberts haters lined up on the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
The Dodgers are still in first place. The Dodgers have had 17 pitchers on the disabled list this season. Every one of their aces has been hurt, and they're in first place. And they're still in first place without Mookie Betts and without Max Muncy for a large segment of the season. And they're in first place with the bottom half of their batting order for at least half the year, hitting like 118. It was terrible. And then they're still in first place despite losing Freddie Freeman because of the severe illness of his son, who left the club for over a week. Now he's back too. So I think you need to respect what the Dodgers have accomplished, because that's a truckload of adversity around them.
Well, of course, the Dodgers have had an amazing season. Like you say, considering all those injuries. So I'm going to go back to this point that Richard makes, because he says the Padres get very emotional when they play the Dodgers. Okay, the fans get very emotional.
Oh, you think?
Yeah, the Padre fan, Dodger fan, I get it. And sometimes the players will feed off the fans and express their big emotion. I mean, we saw that the Padres-Dodgers playoff series a few years ago. But do the players themselves really have a bent up, hate of the other team? I don't think they do.
No, but I do think they get emotionally aroused when there's a big hit. And suddenly, I mean, I've been in that press box. I sat with Peter Seidler down in his corporate seats. I've sat on the third level, section 3 ton, behind home plate on the right side. And just to experience a Padre Dodger rally, the stadium explodes. It's like being in an NFL stadium during the playoffs. I mean, the electricity is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, it's awesome what Padre baseball at Petco Park has become. And what ownership has done to sell the franchise, as competitive as the franchise has become, though they haven't gotten a World Series yet. What they've done at Gallagher Park, Tailgate, Park, it's just amazing. I mean, it's become a destination point. It's become a big thing, and when they're rocking and rolling, that stadium shakes. It's really cool.
Well, look at you hobnobbing with all the rich guys and the VIP
Name
seats.
dropper.
Name dropper. Okay. All right, let's move on. Let's go here to Dale. This is kind of a hard hit here. Have you dropped political opinions yet, Lee? I like sports.
I like sports. But according to the First Amendment, this guy must be a Trumper. That's okay. You're entitled to vote and root for whoever you want. You can use your First Amendment, but pal, I'm going to use my First Amendment. So yes, I have political opinions, and I know where I stand on things, and I know right versus wrong. But I'm entitled. You don't have to agree with me. Hell, he doesn't agree with me. But just respect what I do in the sports world.
Yeah,
because that's the only bloody thing that counts right now on this podcast.
Well, I mean, like a tiny fraction of 1% of what you talk about is politics.
Yeah.
It's just kind of, it's just the general nature of society right now, where politics sort of infecting everything. And it does cross into the world of sports, and like, with Simone Biles and her black job, so I think when it's appropriate, I think it's okay to talk politics.
So should I say what I really feel?
Of course, one man's opinion, baby.
Trump is pathologically immoral. Period, exclamation point, no further discussion. You can't change my idea. And if you try to change my idea, then you're trying to tell me January 6th never happened and the court cases never happened and the indictments and the felonies and the lawsuits never happened. All that stuff happened. That's one man's opinion on politics. But respect my ass for what I do in the sports talk world, because I think I'm pretty bleeping brilliant doing that.
Yeah, I want to talk sports and sometimes politics with you.
Imagine if I was doing a political talk show.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be radio something. Would be a little too hot to touch at that point in time. Dale, hope you'll stay with us as a sports fan. Next question.
I would love to actually to hear all the Hacksaw shtick within the context of a political talk show.
Oh my God.
Get those phone lines lit. All right, let's go here to Phil. And he says, used to listen to you in the late 80s and early 90s via San Diego radio. I remember you scooping the Angels trade of Jim Edmonds to St. Louis.
Yeah, we did. Well, we were on the big signal on Extra 690. And our signal went everywhere. So we really kind of did a national West Coast talk show. And we'd cover all these teams on a consistently solid basis in terms of having insiders and getting tips and things of that. I like Jim Edmonds, man. He was a warrior as a player and as a personality. And it was a really good era. I mean, I was very fortunate because I talked my way into doing my show at Angel Stadium, even though we weren't the flagship station. They let me do what I did, and we do patio parties out front of Angel Stadium. We do it from the press box. We did it from the right field seats. And we were fortunate because that was the era of guys that I really liked and respected as players. Chuck Finley, Mark Langston, obviously Tim Salmon. And, I mean, the young shortstop, David Eckstein, at that point was young. I mean, there were so many great players just to be around, and had a good time covering the Angels, had a really good time covering the Dodgers. And I was based in San Diego. We brought my sports talk show to Vero Beach, historic Dodger town, Vero Beach. I thought I had died and gone to heaven doing our show from the pavilion at Vero Beach. I mean, that was such a cool thing. I was so sad because I'm a huge history buff. As John can tell you, John's visited my house, and my family room has wall-to-wall bookcases of books on history, big time. And we went to Vero Beach, and Vero Beach, to me, is the pantheon of a cathedral. Spring training for the Dodgers since 1948, Branch Rickey, Jackie Robinson, and all that. Just to walk those hollowed grounds. And I told somebody, I said, God, if this place could talk, could it tell you some stories about Holman Field and Vero Beach and all the great eras of Dodger baseball? So I'm a big baseball historian fan. So I was very fortunate because I was the first one took our sports talk show to Yuma, Padres back then at Ray Kroc Sun Stadium, I guess it was. And then obviously Cactus League. So we'd go over there every spring. And then I talked my way during the regular season. Hey, let's do something in Anaheim. We had a lot of listeners in Orange County. Let's go to Angel Stadium. Well, they let us in. They let us in. And so we did a whole bunch of shows there. And then obviously going to Vero Beach with the Dodgers was really, really cool.
Well, you told me that you were able to interview Vince Scully.
Sure.
And that was there, right? In Vero Beach. I just want to comment on Jim Edmonds because I remember, Angels, but I remember him being really good with the Cardinals. And then near the end of his career, didn't the Padres trade? I was like Wally Whitehurst for him.
Yeah, he was hurt, though. He had a number of injuries towards the end of his career.
Jim Edmonds.
Yes.
Yeah. And so when we got him, he was a shell of his former self. Yep. And I'm like, oh, it's another terrible trade by the Padres. And then we released him. He signs with St. Louis. And suddenly he was great again. And I'm like, God, this is San Diego sports curse.
Yeah. He was a warrior. He was a really good player and just a grinder.
Oh, yeah. And then there's always that one catch, where he was going straight for the wall and he caught it over his shoulder.
Exactly. Thank you for the memory lane on Jim Edmonds. Go ahead. Next question.
Okay, let's go to John. He says, hey, heck of a divisional race in the AL East. You got the Yankees, best team money can buy, and the small market Orioles tied, each at 67 and 46. That's going to be a fight to the finish.
Yeah, it's a real dogfight. The Yankees got something they really needed at the trade deadline. That's why I think the Yankees might have had the third best time at the trading deadline. I had the Padres and Dodgers kind of ranked 1A and 1B. The Yankees right behind him getting Jazz Chisholm. I thought that was hugely impactful because he can play multiple positions and he's got such a persona. but they didn't get pitching. And I went and looked at their ERAs early this morning. There's something else I was working on, and Garrett Cole's ERA is 5.20. He has not come back to be the pitcher he was. And Nestor Cortez, who had a great season last year, his ERA is like in the sixes. Luis Gil, he's got 11 or 12 wins. He's going to pitch this week against the Angels. He's pitched well, but the Yankees are wafer thin in pitching. I was surprised they did not go get an arm, because they do have a lot in their farm system they could have used as trade bait. But and Baltimore is not really a small market. They have new ownership. The Angelos family sold the team within the past calendar year. Baltimore's general manager, Mike Elias, has done such a phenomenal job drafting, and they had lousy years. They had one season, I think they lost 119 games. They had some horrible seasons, but virtually every draft pick they got early, they signed, and they're all playing at Camden Yards now. When the Padres went in there about a week ago, John, 7 of the 8 everyday players, position players, were Oriole farm system players. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And then Baltimore went out and traded for, Zach Eflin from Tampa Bay, and made another trade to get get Taylor Rogers. So Baltimore has gotten some insurance policy veteran pitching. And that's a really young team. It's one of the younger teams in Major League Baseball. Look where they are. So yeah, American League East, it's a dogfight. And Boston is not viewed as being a big-time player in that division, but Boston's kids have just grown together. They might not make the wild card, but I mean, if Boston can get some more pitching to go with their everyday players, Duran and all them, Raf Devers, that's going to be a really good team a year from now. But they do need some more arms at Fenway Park.
Well, okay, call me a hater, but I'm rooting for the Yankees to struggle, especially with the whole Juan Soto drama, and he's got 1 year left on the deal, because I'm interested to see what happens to him in the offseason.
He's cooled off, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's get, he had, 16 home runs. Look at he split. He's only got 28 now. He's not hitting for power. Judge is having a superhuman season. Holy cow. I mean, I think Aaron Judge is hitting 332, and he's got 42 home runs now. He's just the sad part is Giancarlo Stanton. I mean, that was a budding superstar when he was in the Marlins, and he's had so many injuries. He's batting in the 240s. I think he's got 18 home runs. He's a shell of the player that he was when he was in Miami, when he was an absolute stud.
Yeah, I mean, the marquee players of the Yankees are obviously, doing great. Some aren't doing as well. I love the kids in Baltimore. Orioles haven't been relevant in decades. But this is just a weird pet peeve I have about the AL East, is whenever you look at the standings in the newspaper or online, the AL East is always first. You ever notice that?
I always thought the NL West was always first.
Really?
That's what I thought. Maybe my newspaper is different than your
I know.
newspaper.
I always see it as the AL East, AL Central, AL West, and then
NL East, NL Central,
and then NL West, and the NL West was always last.
I don't know. When we're done, you can go get your morning newspaper. I'm not quite sure on that, but it's okay. Go follow it. Next question.
All right, let's go here to Callan. He goes, the new kickoff rule is dumb, but not as dumb as having to declare to the opposing team, we're doing an onside kick.
Yeah, that's really strange. For the fans that don't know, at the end of last week, the NFL sent out a memo that we're making adjustments in the onside kick rule. You can onside kick, but you have to be trailing in the fourth quarter. You cannot do an onside kick any other segment of the game. And secondly, if you can onside kick, I have to tell John Riley there's an onside kick coming, which takes out the element of surprise. Maybe it's because there were to be such violent collisions. I don't know. They've taken that out of the game. But the new rule is for safety first, and to allow guys to make explosive Billy White Shoes Johnson kick returns. And that's what this is all about, in addition to make it safer for the players.
Billy White Shoes Johnson.
There's a name out of history book.
Remember, he was one of the first guys in the end zone that would
do the
dance. And it was the Falcons, and I think the Oilers, right? Back in the day. But yeah, it's the onside kick in the NFL is the weirdest thing. I mean, it's like the drop third strike in baseball. It rarely works. It's stupid to have to declare you're going to do it, and it's stupid to limit them when they're behind. But I do like the idea that there's a way that the team can get the ball back quick. You would think it would be something that wasn't so bizarre like this.
Well, there was a bizarre Philadelphia Eagles proposal 2 years in a row. The league said, nah. There was a proposal that instead of an onside kick, which has dangerous factions to its execution, there was a proposal that was called the 4th and 21. if instead of an onside kick, you would try a 4th down and 21 play, and if you converted on 4th and 21, you get a first down a la an onside kick.
No, actually, I like that idea.
And
I would even make it more. I'd make it like 4th and 35 or something. That's a cool idea.
Well, it was proposed, but was voted down as, that's too radical.
Well, the NFL are a bunch of conservatives anyway.
Well, up until this rule change, I guarantee you, you watch the games this weekend, John, and all of our people on live stream, you watch an NFL game and see the kickoff alignments. You say, what the hell is that? Why is it like that? And now the league's got their hands full because some of these coaches are starting to cheat. You can't put guys in motion. You can't move them around. They have to be stationary as the ball is kicked off. So, Callum, thank you for the input. Go ahead, John.
Cheat? What are you talking about? All right, let's go here to Kurt. He says, love listening to you on the Mighty 690. Just discovered you had a podcast. I'll be a faithful listener now.
Hear, hear. What you people need to do is a favor for me and a favor for John. Maybe you're doing it for him because you like him more than you like me. We just need you to market our podcast. We need you to tell everybody in your address book, everybody on social media that you hang with, communicate with. Hacksaw is back. And you tell them Hacksaw's podcast on YouTube, Mondays at 1 p.m., Thursdays at 1 p.m. They can decide whether they like it or not. But we're just trying to explode the growth of this thing.
Hacksaw in the 21st century, baby, bringing his 9600 baud modem with him, dialing in. All right, let's go.
And this is from a guy who's still got a Royal manual typewriter in his garage.
All right, here, let's go to CEB under par. He goes, hey, it was 108 degrees in Lake Elsinore. Kind of hard to get comfortable.
Oh. We do this from this Taj Mahal studio that John built in his castle here. It is so nice and so cool. I can't get my house to be this cool, though my house is sealed because of windows and doors of Dixieline lumber. Thank you. But I can't get my house this cool. But John has got solar panels.
Yes.
John does not pay SDG&E. A lot of us still do. So maybe I should just move in here.
I know. Yeah, we'll set up a cot right here in the podcast studio. It'd be perfect. But yeah, Joe Musgrove, was he pitching when it was 108 degrees?
Well, he pitched last night. It was probably pretty bloody warm. It's 105 in my driveway today in Rancho Bernardo. I was ready to wave the white flag. We're going to cook eggs on my driveway, on my black pavement in my driveway. I tell my friends, I love the smell of late summer. Late summer, they're repaving my street, which has got a zillion potholes in it. I love the smell of hot tar on a hot summer day in San Diego when it's 105 outside. Oh,
it's brutal. I mean, we were just in a recently paved parking lot yesterday. We got out of our car and it was like walking to an oven. Yeah, all the heat was radiating up. I mean, okay, to get us started.
I used to do Phoenix Giants game in the Pacific Coast League at Phoenix Municipal Stadium, which is in the east end of the city. And that was an old cement slab stadium. And I did PCL games in the summer, and that stadium baked all day. And you get there at night, the sun may go down, you just feel the heat radiating off the cement. It was just, I used to wrap wet towels around my neck or sitting there and doing a 3-hour Pacific Coast League game. Mark Grant pitched for the Phoenix Giants when I was doing Phoenix Giants baseball in the Coast League when I worked at KTAR.
Back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of people on social media that will say that, oh, I remember you from Phoenix.
Yeah. Mark Grant gave up one of the longest home runs I've ever seen, and I tell him about it all the time. The Dodgers had a power-hitting first baseman and a power-hitting right-handed hitting first baseman. One was a guy by the name of Greg Brock. You remember that name? Yeah. The other was Mike Marshall.
Yeah.
I can't remember who Grant gave up the bomb to. It was one of those first basemen. He launched that sucker. It's probably still up in orbit. I've never seen a ball. And again, that was dry heat. That was thin air. That ball got out of there so damn quick. It was unbelievable. I asked Mark, that ball ever come down yet?
When I think of Mike Marshall, he was either dating or married to Belinda Carlisle, who was the lead singer of the Go-Go's from back in the 80s. But, talking about hot, wait till you see Sacramento A's baseball this next year.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be brutal.
That's a hot box, too. Next question.
Okay, let's go to Paul. He says, be forewarned, the Pirates are no longer a substandard team. If the Padres take them lightly, they'll get their butt kicked.
The question is, does Pittsburgh have enough hitting? That's a real issue. I mean, there's no doubt they got some great talent that's come through the farm system. And everything on that pitching staff is homegrown, and that's really, really impressive. But in all honesty, Paul, you gotta be there. You gotta get through the playoffs, the pressure and all that stuff, because the atmosphere really changes. I don't know if Pittsburgh is ready for it. Last year Baltimore had that unbelievable season, and everybody was excited. The Orioles had finally arrived with all their kids, and they got to the playoffs, and they got taken out of the playoffs just like that. And that's a maturity experience factor. Pittsburgh still got to take the couple of those steps to experience it.
Well, they kind of crept into the wild card when no one was looking, right?
Mm-hmm.
It just seemed like, oh my God, Pittsburgh's on the list there. Padres need to take care of business. They seem to finally be in the right mindset, where they're not going to this herky-jerky, win a series, lose a series. 11 out of 14 ain't bad, so hopefully they can keep it rolling.
Well, they're playing the Rocks, the Marlins, the Pirates. That's what this 15-game segment is. Mm-hmm. If they're ever going to get to first place before the end of the season, it has to happen in the next 12 days.
Well, you said 15-0, I remember, but they're already now 2-1 since then.
Okay, so we'll go play the Pirates on Tuesday, and we'll just see where it goes.
Remember, just real quick, remember the Orioles and the Pirates World Series 79?
Manny Sanguillen, baby.
Manny Sanguillen. That was We Are Family, Willie Stargell.
Oh, it's a great series.
Wasn't that awesome?
Great. Baltimore, some of the greatest pitching staffs of modern-day baseball. There was about a 2 or 3 year window where the Pancake Palmer, Dave McNally, Mike Cuellar. They had a 4-man rotation.
Had 4 guys.
Yeah, it was really,
they all
really
won 20
good.
games that year.
Yeah. That was a special Orioles team. And Brooks Robinson at third base.
The human vacuum cleaner, Hoover. Okay, let's go here to Jason. He goes, Antonio Gates not being on the first ballot is lunacy.
Yeah, there was a traffic jam there. He's going to be on it, and he's going to get voted in. And, it's unfair to say, well, they never got to the Super Bowl. Well, that does not mean Antonio Gates or Tomlinson or Rivers wasn't great. They just never got to a Super Bowl organizationally. But, 900-plus receptions as a tight end, all those touchdowns for a guy that didn't play college football. That's the most amazing asterisk that goes on his stat sheet.
Well, he's a MAC guy, too, just like you, right? Kent State. So, it was just it was a neat, the basketball story. And sometimes, again, I see some of these kids playing basketball, like that center for NC State that was in the March Madness. You're thinking, man, that guy could probably play football. I mean, Jaden Ledee could probably play some football.
Sure, make him a tight end or strong side linebacker or whatever.
Exactly. So, but the Gronkowski is probably one of the best tight ends of all time. You got to believe, right? And then who are some of the other big names at tight end? The kid from the Chiefs,
Tony Gonzalez, and he was a former basketball player at Cal, and obviously, the 40
Winslow.
Well, Winslow, he was one of the first great tight ends, pass catching tight ends, and that was a byproduct of the spectacular things that Coryell did with mismatches. Coryell was, these are my skill guys. What the hell are you going to do about it? And by the way, he had Dan Fouts. So that was the thing that came together, and Winslow became just an icon for a chunk of years just because of the system he was in that predicated mismatches. You can't cover me because you got to cover all those guys. And, I think back, and I was in Cleveland at that point, and how the hell the Chargers never got to a Super Bowl with Fouts, Muncy, Pete Johnson, Kellen Winslow, Charlie Joyner, JJ, John Jefferson, Wes Chandler. They never got to a Super Bowl with that accolade of unbelievable skill people.
And they had Fred Dean and Gary Big Hands
on the
Johnson.
Defensive side of the ball, but the defense wasn't very good.
Yeah.
Couldn't keep people from scoring.
Well, I'll tell you what, when Fred Dean came over to the 49ers, man, he was hella good.
Yeah, exactly.
But just one final tight end question for you. Back in that same era, Dave Casper from the Raiders, how do you rank him in the world of tight ends?
I'd say probably inside the top 10. But, the careers sometimes get short because of injuries. So you can think about 80 catch seasons, but could he do it for 5 years in a row or 8 years in a row? I mean, Gates had 900 plus receptions for a guy who didn't play college football. I mean, that's the most astounding thing. And he opened the door for a ton of other people, because the minute that they found him, was it John Butler or A.J. Smith was the general manager at that point in time, everybody started looking at basketball players and say, maybe I can project him to build him into a tight end. And it was happening in a lot of different places around the league.
Exactly. Yeah. I love the innovation.
Okay, let's wrap it up. Let's take one more here. You got another one?
Yeah, I do. I got another one. Let's do a little social media here, and yeah, let's talk Olympics. And this is from David. He says, "Great segment again, Mr. Hacksaw. This is about Simone Biles. You are right on the money on this. It's a heartbreaking story, especially after being sexually abused by Nasser. Thank you for bringing up mental health."
Well, like I said, and for those who aren't aware, I did a commentary last week that she should get a, quote, gold medal in society for what she did to take a public stance of mental health. I have problems. I need help. Don't be afraid if you have problems with depression to raise your hand and ask for help. What that did for all young Americans and what it did for just Americans across the board, because that opened up the door for other athletes to come front and center. It was like a tidal wave of athletes who said, yes, I have struggled with mental health and counseling or help through medications. It can be done. So, I mean, what she's done as a young Olympic gymnast to become a great leader for young America, I just think it's phenomenal.
She's amazing in so many different dimensions. But think about how far we've come on this, because you go back to the 70s and it was like Nadia Comaneci and all these other gymnasts all around the world. Pretty much every one of them was white. Even in America, our whole team were white. And then, come maybe the 80s or 90s, we began to see people of color that were on the USA team. And you're like, hey, right on. And now it's not just Simone Biles is winning it, but she's now become a superhero.
Yeah. And I think the other factor, as David has brought up and nobody's really talked about, virtually all those young American gymnasts were sexually abused by that guy, Dr. Larry Nassar at Michigan State. Oh, yeah. And he's in prison for life. And I bet we're going to walk up in here one of these days, he's going to be dead in prison. But think about that trauma that all those young girls had to live through or live with, that they were sexually abused by this guy who was the U.S. Olympic gymnast trainer, in addition to being the trainer at Michigan State University. And they had to carry that, what happened to them. And that was a private thing, and it was a disgraceful thing. And there was probably guilt involved. And those young girls had to carry that in addition to whether they were fighting depression or depression was triggered by what happened to them. And then, by the way, go out and compete against the greatest in the world, too.
I mean, that's insane. I mean, I would melt under all that pressure, especially when you're in your 20s or in some cases your late teens.
Exactly.
So it's amazing that these young women have survived this and been such exceptional performers, including Suni Lee with her own kind of, comeback story.
Illness, adversity, just absolutely amazing. Let's do a couple more social media.
Okay, let's go here. A little Padre talk. This is from James. This team has been irrelevant for nearly all of its 55 years. I'd rather gamble and see if it pays off than be stuck in mediocrity forever.
Well, they have gambled. I mean, they have forfeited the whole future. I mean, AJ Preller, they may be upset with me because of the column I wrote last week, but the reality is he's traded the farm system away 3 times now in his 9 or 10 years, and they've still not gotten to the World Series. Has to happen now. And I think the potential is it can happen now, because it won't happen in 2 years. I mean, you trade that many hot prospects away, and you have all these 30-plus-year-old players under long-term contracts you're going to be stuck with, and there's nothing left in the farm system. I think El Paso is 25 games under 500 in AAA right now. That's not good. And the same thing's happened in San Antonio, too. So they made a commitment. This is the way we will conduct our business. Hopefully, we're going to talk about baseball in October. I mean, it'd be phenomenal for the community to get to the World Series. If they don't, then there's going to be accountability at the front door of A.J. Preller as general manager if this does not work out. Has to work out the next 2 years.
Do you think Manny Machado cares about prospects in El Paso? Not at all. They want to win now. So the fact that AJ is trading those prospects has got to make the veterans feel really good. Like, they're finally in a good spot here. So, I agree here with James. The Padres have been just so blah for so long that it's wonderful to see them to be relevant right now in the world of baseball. And whenever there's a trade or a free agent, San Diego is always in the conversation. When did that happen?
Well, that happened because of Peter Seidler's relationship with A.J. Preller and giving him the blank check to do it, and then A.J. overspent the blank check. Okay, let's do one more social media before we put a lid on this.
Okay, let's go here and do a little slap shot. And this is from Roger. He says, yes, the Jets and the days of Don Hall and Dick Roberge always great games against the New Haven Blades at the New Haven Arena.
He's talking about we did a thing on the movie Slapshot, a movie review. And I told all these stories about when I was in the Eastern Hockey League, which was where that was, the Long Island Ducks and the Johnstown Jacks and the New Haven Blades, etc. And obviously the Hanson brothers, AKR, the real name was the Carlson brothers. And I spent 4 years in that league, and virtually all the stories in Slapshot were true. But boy, this guy's probably seen a few power plays in his life. If he's quoting Don Hall, former NHL goaltender, and Dick Roberge, that goes back into the late 1960s and the early 1970s. So he's seen a few slap shots and power plays in his life.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool that you live that whole thing.
I didn't think it was cool. 9-hour bus trip one way in a blizzard to Johnstown, Pennsylvania.
But you were in your 20s back then, probably. You were young. You're on the bus with these athletes, and that would still be kind of a cool adventure.
I will give you a sidebar. John and I came up with something we decided to do. We are working on a project, the greatest baseball movies of all time, the greatest football movies of all time, the greatest basketball movies of all time, greatest hockey movies or other sports movies of all time. So we're in the process of trying to package all this. So we will have a series of interviews that we will run that you will get a kick out of, because the response we got when we did this one-off on Slapshot, where I was and what I experienced, we got such positive vibes back from hockey fan that we're going to do this going forward with the best baseball movies. It's always a great arguing point. So that'll be coming down the road. We'll tell you when we're going to spin it off for you.
Yeah, I like that. Plus, it's always nice to have a few of those recorded shows just in case, that we have a little disruption in our schedule.
Or we don't get along any longer and you elect to do it solo. Yeah. Hey, listen, we hope you have enjoyed this Monday bonus podcast.